As in my previous video, I'm thrilled to be able to be making this for a good friend who asked that I do her favorite team, which happens to be the Chicago Blackhawks. So Teresa Tripoli, this is for you, and we'll get started with your Blackhawk player. For this character, we are going to be using a standard rainbow loom in the aligned configuration, and that's where the pins are all even with each other. And the bands that we'll be using are black, clear, white, skin tone, red, and 4 silver bands for the skate blades. We're going to start with the arms, and for that we're going to be using our red, white, and black bands. Everything's going to be double banded, and we're going to start with 2 red bands, and we're going to go down our right side pin 2 times with 2 red bands each time. Next, we want to take 2 white bands and go down once with 2 white bands, and we're going to go back to our red bands and go down once with our red bands. We want to then take 3 black bands to represent the glove, and we'll add that after our red. And we're going to cap this last peg with a single black band wrapped 3 times around the peg. We want to do the same thing for the other arm. So again, we're going to take 2 red bands followed by 2 red bands, and then 2 white bands, 2 red bands, and finally 3 black bands to represent the glove. And we're going to cap this one as well with a single black band wrapped 3 times around the peg. And now we're ready to loop, and we're just going to loop the black and the red to start with. So we're going to reach inside our cap band and grab all 3 black bands of our glove. To make sure I've got all 3 here. There we go. And we're going to loop those forward, and we will loop our red bands forward. Again, we're reaching inside our cap band, grabbing the 3 black bands of our glove and looping those forward. And again with the red. And we want to take a single black band and wrap it around our hook 4 times. And when we reach in to grab these white bands, we want to slide all 4 of these loops down onto our white band, and then we can loop it over the peg above. We're going to do the same thing for the other arm. A single black band, wrap it 4 times around our hook, and when we reach in and grab these white bands, before we loop them to the peg above, we're going to slide all of our black bands down onto our white, and we can loop that up. And then we can just continue looping, and we're going to finish off one arm and then finish off the other. And we can remove this from the loom, and I'm just going to grab a spare crochet hook and reach in here and pull these off, and the same thing with the other arm. And I want to just adjust the cap band a little bit to even it out. And while we're here, we're going to take our black bands that we've added to our white, and we're just going to grab 2 of those bands, stretch them out a little bit, and place them on the other side of our glove, tucking our glove through, so that we've got 2 black bands on either side of his arm. And we're going to do the same thing for the other arm. Again, grabbing just 2 of these black bands, stretching them out a little bit, and tucking our glove through those bands so that we have 2 black bands on either side of his arm. And now we can set this aside, and we're going to move on to his legs. And again, we'll be using black, white, and red bands. We will also be needing our silver bands for his skate blades. And once again, we are going to start with 2 red bands, and we're going to go down 2 times, followed by 2 white bands, 2 red bands, and our 2 silver bands. So these are almost identical to the arms, but not quite. So again, we'll do the same thing for the other leg. 2 red, 2 times going down the left side, followed by 2 white, and then 2 red, and then 2 silver for our skate blades. And we are going to cap both of these bottom pegs with a single black band wrapped 3 times around the peg. And I want to straighten out my silver bands here on this side. Those ones are okay. And again, we're just going to loop the bottom 2 first. So I'm going to reach in and grab my 2 silver and loop them forward, and my 2 red, and the same thing on the other side, looping my 2 silver forward and the 2 red. And again, I want to grab a single black band and wrap it 4 times around my hook. And when I reach in and grab these 2 white bands, I want to slide all 4 black loops onto the white band before I loop it forward. And then we can finish looping our leg. And we're going to do the same thing for the other leg. A single black band, wrap it around our hook 4 times, reaching in and grabbing our 2 white bands, sliding all 4 black loops down onto that white band and looping it over the peg above. And we can finish off this side. And there we go. We also want to remove this, and we'll place these on our holding hook as well. And again, we want to move 2 of the black bands from one side of his leg to the other. So I'm just going to grab 2 bands, stretch them out a little bit, tuck my skate through, and place the bands on the other side. And again, we want to end up with 2 black bands on either side of his leg. And we can fiddle with those later to stretch them out and separate them a bit, but I want to grab the other 2 black bands from the other arm, tuck my skate through, and put those on the other side so that we've got 2 black bands on either side of his leg. And we can set this aside. And now we're ready to band our loom, and we're going to start with black bands, and everything will be double looped. And we're going to start by going down the center, and we'll start with our 2 black bands from the first peg to the second peg, followed by 2 more black bands. And as I said, we're going to continue down the center. So we'll grab 2 clear bands for his visor, 2 skin tone bands for the bottom part of his face. We want 3 black bands for his neck protector. And continuing down the center, we want to place a single white band followed by a single black band on top of that white band. And next we want to place 2 red bands, and we're going to do that 3 times. So we're continuing down the center 3 times with 2 red bands. Next we want 2 white bands, followed by 2 black bands. And that's going to almost finish off our center. We're going to go back up and we'll band the left side. And for that, we're going from the second peg on the left to the first peg in the center. And then we will place 2 black bands from the second peg to the third. We are going to take 2 clear bands and continue down the left side for the visor, followed by 2 skin tone bands from the 4th peg on the left to the 5th peg in the center. And continuing down the left side, we want to take 2 red bands from the 6th peg in the center to the 7th peg on the left. And again, we'll continue down the left side and place 2 red bands. We're going to continue down this side 3 times altogether with 2 red bands. So you want to go from the center to the left with 2 red bands, and then down the left side 3 times with 2 red bands. And again, we need 2 white bands. And to finish off our left side, we need 2 black bands 2 times going down the left side. And we're going to do the same thing on the right. And again, we'll start up at the top of his helmet. And we're going to go from the first peg in the center to the second peg on the right. And from the second peg to the third with 2 black bands. Next, we want 2 clear bands for his visor, followed by 2 skin tone bands from the 5th peg in the center to the 4th peg on the right. And to continue down the right side, we're going to take 2 red bands from the 6th peg in the center to the 7th peg on the right. And again, we will continue down the right side 3 times with 2 red bands each time. We want to add 2 white bands, followed by 2 black bands 2 times to finish off his hockey pants. To finish off his hockey pants, we want to take 2 black bands from the last peg on the left on the bottom to the second peg from the bottom in the center, and the last peg on the bottom on the right. Again, over to the second peg from the bottom in the center. And now we're ready for our attachments. And we are going to start with our skates. And we'll add those to the last peg down on the left and the last peg down on the right. And for our arms, we want to attach those to the 7th peg down on the left from the top, and the 7th peg from the top on the right. And now we need to add our holding bands, and for that we're going to need a single black band, and it's going to go across the second pins down or pegs down. A single clear band will go across the third, and a single skin tone band will go across the fourth. Moving down to his jersey, we're going to add a single red across the 8th pegs, a single red across the 9th pegs, a single white band across the 10th pegs, And again, a single black band across the 11th pegs, and a single black band across the 12th pegs. And now we're ready to loop. And we're going to start at the bottom, and we want to reach inside our leg attachment here and grab the top 2 black bands, which are going to loop over to the center. And again, for the other side, we're going to reach inside, grab our top 2 black bands, and loop them over to the center. And now we can loop up the left side, and we're just going to loop his hockey pants. So we're only going to loop these 2 sets of black. And again, we're going to do the same thing, grabbing the 2 black bands and looping them forward, and again 2 black bands and looping them forward. And now we want to loop up the center, so we're going to reach inside all of our bands, grab the bottom 2 black bands and loop them forward. And what we want to do next, we're going to take 2 black bands and we're going to place them on top of our white holding band. And what we're going to do, we're now going to loop our white bands all the way across. And before we continue, we want to grab the top of our black bands here and pull them down over the white bands. And now we can continue looping up the left side, and we're going to loop all the way up to the neck, making sure that we're forming our teardrop shape as we go, and that we're grabbing both bands and staying inside the holding bands. Again, we want to go to the right side, reaching inside our holding band, grabbing the bottom 2 red, and forming our raindrop shape as we loop to the peg above. And again, we're going to go up to the neck, there we go. And now we can continue looping up the center. And we're just going to reach in, grab our 2 bands, and form our raindrop shape. There we go. When we get to the neck, we want to remember that we've used 3 bands for our neck protector. So when we reach inside, we want to make sure we grab all 3 before we loop them to the peg above. And now we want to grab the top 2 skin tone and loop them over to the right. The next 2 skin tone will go over to the left, and the final 2 will go straight forward. And we can now loop up the left side, looping our 2 clear bands, staying inside our holding bands, and looping our final 2 sets of black to the top center peg. And we can do the same thing on the right side, staying inside our holding band, grabbing our bottom 2 clear, forming our raindrop shape as we loop forward, and again we'll loop to the top center peg. And now we can finish off the center by grabbing the 2 clear bands and looping them forward, 2 black, and the final 2 black bands. And we just want to double check that we've looped everything and that you've pulled these black bands down over your white. And you can just make sure that they're smooth and even here. And now we're ready to remove this from our loom if we have made sure that we didn't miss anything. And we're going to take a single black band, reach down through our top center peg, grab a hold of our black band and pull it through and form our slip knot. And we want to give that a gentle tug. And I like to release some of the, of course, tension here so it doesn't break. But as I've mentioned in previous tutorials, I do use broken bands for my slipknot bands, so I'm just going to remove this band, and I will show you how I do that so that I don't waste bands. So I'm going to join the two broken ends together and hold them in my fingertips so that I have my black loop, and then I'm going to reach in through these bands, grab a hold of the loop as I normally would, pull it up through, and then instead of grabbing the loop, I'm going to grab the side of the bands and pull them through the loop on my hook, making sure I've got both of the ends, and then I'm just going to give this a gentle tug to secure that slip knot. And now we're ready to remove this from the loom, and we're going to start at the bottom, and I'm just going to remove these from the pegs. When I get to the neck, I want to place my hook down through the center of that peg and just roll my hook around. There are a lot of bands there, and I don't want to add extra tension to the bands, so we'd hate to get this far and have them break on us. And again with the top peg, I'll place my hook in and pull it off. Okay, and now we need just a little bit of tweaking. And that part broke again, but it's still caught, so that's good. It's still secure. Okay, so what we want to do now, we're going to define his feet, and I'm just going to pull the skates to the side, and you can do that also by placing your hook down through the center and just tugging the bands to the side. And that's just to define the feet a little bit so that it'll look more like the blades are actually touching the ice, and also that his foot looks like an actual foot. So for the center here at his waist, I just want to make sure that those two black bands are not twisted and they're forming there properly. And we could also give him a little tug sideways to tighten up those bands a little bit. Doubling these bands would have made it too tight at his waist, and we just wanted the design of his sweater, which is two black stripes on the bottom of his sweater. So, and for his arms, we're going to place our hook down through the center of the teardrop at his shoulder and just give those bands a little tug, and that will angle his arm down. And we can do the same thing on the other side. And I'm just going to grab a hold of the bands and give them a little tug, and that will also angle his arm down to the side. And now we can separate the black bands that we have around his wrist or his arm, just to make it look like they're actual stripes. And we'll do that on both sides, just separating these bands. And again, that's just to look more like the design on his sweater. And so now we want to secure our slip knot, and mine broke off pretty short, so I just have one band here to tuck in, but I'm just going to reach through a couple of bands at the back and weave it through in a couple of spots, and that's just to secure them out of the way so that they can't be seen. And as I've mentioned, there is no reason whatsoever that you cannot use a broken band for your slipknot band. It makes no difference whether it's broken or not for this purpose. And I personally don't like to waste bands. So there you go, Teresa. This is your Chicago Blackhawk. I hope you like it. I can't wait to see your version. I also have a tutorial for the hockey stick for the players, so check that out and make one of those for him as well. And thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you taking the time to check this out. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I have lots more coming up, as I've mentioned in my Washington Capitol hockey player tutorials. So take a look at that one and listen at the end to what I have all coming up. And again, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.